Welcome to Season 2 of Under the Sisterhood. Over the 31 days of March, we are celebrating 31 Women's March of Voices during Women's History Month. We will have intimate conversations that will uncover each woman's superpower and find out how they use these superpowers to help other women. That's 31 days honoring 31 women and their superpowers. This is a podcast to celebrate women and all that they do in our world. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein. Let's get under the hood. Today, we're celebrating Olivia Clyne. Olivia is a daughter, sister, wife, friend, a voracious reader, writer, world traveler, yogi, an integrated nutritionist in training, and a professional squash player on the world tour. She has represented the United States of America for the past 16 years. Olivia has competed in 6 women's world team championships on behalf of her Team USA, her first at age 15. Most recently, she was part of the U.S. team that won a silver medal at the 2022 Women's World Team Squash Championships. She has competed in 3 Pan American Games representing her country. She's won 7 medals, 2 silver medals for the individual event and 2 medals for team event, as well as 3 bronze medals. Olivia also won 2 national championships in 2017 and 2019. Olivia has reached a career high world ranking of world number 11. She has a storied career in squash, beginning at a very young age when she was world champion in U15 and has been a role model for women young and old in sport, having been named the United States Olympic Athlete of the Year award in 2018. I am so thrilled and proud to be celebrating my daughter and firstborn, Olivia Clyne, during Women's History Month. She has been making history for a very long time. Welcome, Olivia.
Thanks, Mom. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Oh, I am so thrilled to be celebrating you on so many levels. But I mean, this is such an important month for women, not just giving them voice, giving them a platform, seeing them, hearing them, celebrating them, but it's Women's History Month. And it's not just like the history as we think about historically women. It's women making history every day with little things that they're doing in life. And of course, you've done many big things. So if it's okay, let's get going.
Sounds good to me.
Wonderful. So the first question is, the huge question, like, Olivia, can you share your story with women around the world?
My story. I almost think sometimes that I have like multiple stories going on all the time. I almost feel at times like there are, several different lives that I have that are all kind of happening in parallel to each other at the same time. But yeah, I think my story technically begins in a Manhattan hospital back in 1993, giving you a hard time coming into this world. I don't think I was quite ready for it. It was a little cold out. But yeah, I think, what maybe my story starts from a memory that I actually personally don't have, but that I remember seeing. And both you and Dad showed me a video of myself when I was probably like 2 or 3, and I had my mom's cowboy boots on, and I couldn't walk in them. And
you weren't 3. You were not even 2, by the way. You weren't even 2 yet. Okay. You were closer to 1.
I was little, and I had these cowboy boots on, and I was trying to move, and I couldn't walk. And I was furious, and I'm jumping up and down. My like fists are, completely crumpled, and my face is like, like, how can I not do this? And I think that was probably the start of my story, because I think that probably is the most representative of who I am, which is kind of a find a way type of person. But yeah, I think, as it pertained to sport, I was always very lucky that I was exposed to so much when I was younger, having a super athletic, very successful mother who is an athlete herself, and my father who is a very avid squash player, definitely, helped me get into the sports arena. But yeah, I mean, I started playing when I was 7 years old, and I think we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into, did we? It was all fun and games for about 2 weeks, and then it was then it was a little bit like, okay, this kid has some athletic potential here, and she might be quite good at this. And honestly, I mean, I was 7 by the time I was playing in tournaments and events and traveling, and I think that's when I started really sourcing a part of my identity as a squash player, as an athlete, as someone who was committed to sports. Definitely from about, I would say about 7. I even remember like going to school, and soon enough, if they were like, okay, put yourself in order from fastest to slowest, I would always put myself towards the end of that after I kind of got this confidence, like, no, I'm an athlete, I'm a squash player. And it kind of built from there. But yeah, I think, 10 from 10 years old, I was really traveling the world to play. And that's kind of what really opened my eyes to this idea that sport could take me around the world, could introduce me to so many different people, so many different cultures, and really, expand me as a human being. And I mean, I was 10. I remember flying to England for my first event and being like, wow, this is different. And look at how different life is. And I still to this day have friends that I played on court with, you know, we call them court rats when you're like little kids. And I still have friends to this day that I played on, you know, was a court rat with back in that day. And I think, that's what starts this history. And obviously for me, I when I say I have lived these parallel lives, I have other elements to myself where I see, I'm a reader and I'm a writer and I'm creative, and I have these other things that are also blossoming alongside this other person. But there's definitely for sure such a maybe the stalk of the flower or plant is very sport centric. Um, but
Can
yeah,
I
I think that,
interject? Can I just
yeah,
interject with something? Because I think that's really, if you don't mind, just to build on that, like the stalk, is really sporty. Another way to think of that is the strength of the stalk, the ability,
totally.
if you think from a metaphor, to go out and compete, and win and win and lose and win a lot and lose a lot and have to be gracious and figure out your ways. So keep going. But I think that's really interesting the way you said that, because it does require so much more than the sport
Yeah,
itself. And so
absolutely. And I think too, when you find something in yourself that, and this goes for anyone, that you have something that you're excited about and that perhaps you show a little bit of aptitude in, this dedication and determination to it really does add so much complexity and so much purpose in your life. And, I had moments when I was a kid where I was this, I had this persona on court of this kind of invincible little nugget of muscle running around like crazy. And, but I definitely didn't always have that off of a squash court. And I had a lot of moments of vulnerability. I mean, I've had a lot of moments of vulnerability on a squash court as well, kind of later as I grew older and a little bit more self aware. But when I was younger, I definitely had this ability to kind of go in to a court and have it be this other person and switch into this other mode that, when I was at school, I was actually, although very talkative, because I've always been talkative, I actually wasn't always super um, confident nor popular. I was kind of always a little bit of an oddball on the outside. And I think squash gave me this ability to really throw myself into something that I had aptitude in, I was good at, I received praise for. And then I also had this like double life where I got to travel around the world. It's like, oh, my science teacher, oh, can I have the homework because I'm going to Germany this weekend to go and play a tournament, at 12 years old. And they're like, sorry, what? Like, you actually can play this squash thing and you're going to travel to Germany for? I'm like, yeah, see you on Monday. I'll have the homework done. But yeah, I mean, so it became very serious when I was young. Obviously, I was traveling and things like that. And I remember, by the time I was kind of 13, really, I actually think that I think of my squash career in kind of particular peaks and troughs of like kind of waves of real build to excitement. And then obviously there's always a trough where you kind of come down from it. You have some hard lessons that you got to learn, and then you kind of go back up. But one of my first real peaks, I think, was when I was 13. And it wasn't even so much from a result point of view, because I was definitely having great results. But those were kind of you know, the product really of the type of work I was putting in. And I was so into this, I was really immersed in getting better. And honestly, my commitment was to, I really wanted to make the junior national team for the under 19s that would be going to Hong Kong. So when that kind of happened, when I ended up doing that, things started happening a little quicker. I ended up going to school in England for a year, trying to kind of, experience squash a little bit differently. I was having a hard time at school in the States. So we're kind of like, okay, should we do a change? That unfortunately didn't work out. I came back and ended up homeschooling, teaching myself 10th, 11th, and 12th grades to the University of Nebraska. Go Cornhuskers. And then decided that I wouldn't play squash in college, but instead I would go onto the professional tour full time. And I think I had this vision of everything, kind of flourishing and being perfect. I had these high expectations. And unfortunately, after 1 year, I was like, wow, this is kind of turning into a little bit of a nightmare. I'm stressed. This is hard. Playing people who have to put food on the table and pay their rent is a lot different than playing young kids who, maybe are just trying to get into college, or maybe, don't take it as seriously as I do. And then all of a sudden you had this fight back. And I would say that I wasn't so ready for so much resistance. But lo and behold, I kind of found my way. I started coaching a little bit. And I missed it. I missed playing after I kind of took some time off. And I mean, it's kind of been a whirlwind amount of time, but even that was about 10 years ago now. I met at the time was a boyfriend. Now he's a husband. Met Alan and really got myself back kind of on my feet, saying I wanted to approach my squash differently. And, I would say I've had peaks and troughs in the last 10 years as well. Obviously had some career highs and things like that. Also went through a lot of human stuff. We talk about this idea of like when you go on court that you want to have this almost invincible, iron shell going on, but, that's not necessarily the truth. Like, I think maybe it's even, kind of unfortunately a very female thing to be told, like, you have to check your emotions at the door. You need to be stronger than what you're feeling. And, I've never been the kind of person that isn't affected by things.
So I
you know,
want
I
to jump. Yeah, I want to jump in and just ask some questions around this. So I mean, I think you just hit on something really important as being a woman in sport, and the feelings. And you talk about the peaks and troughs in your career as a junior. What she didn't say is that she won many events. She was world number one at age 13. I think it's really important to cite an American world number one at age 13 in the under 15. She would go off to all these events, from Amsterdam to Germany to Paris. She'd win everything. So she was winning. And so that, like, having the kind of success, I think it might be worth sharing a little bit about it, because you touched on when you went from junior squash, even traveling the world, being world champion, you went off actually to the junior worlds, the under 19 event at 14. Why don't you tell everybody, because that was a kind of I was there myself. That was kind of a crazy experience. You had tremendous success in the individual event and some success in the team event. But it would be helpful for you to share some of those experiences, because you had so much success. And as you sort of, in a way, you didn't give this scale of going from junior and dealing with, and I think the way you articulated, Olivia, is really beautiful. These people have to put food in their mouths, and they have to put a roof over their head. So their desire to win, it's a whole different level of fight that it's like fight to the bitter end. So talk a little bit about being on that stage where you were, the absolute, one of the best in the world for so many years. And then like the experience along with, of course, the Egyptians, but
Yeah.
that's a lot
I
of
think,
pressure.
yeah, it is, and it isn't. When I look back at the time, I think honestly, when I really look back at it with like the most clear eyes and the most objective eyes that I possibly can, I think that being a teenage woman is freaking hard. No matter if you're successful or you're not, you are talk about hormones and you're learning about yourself and like, whoa, there's just a lot going on. I suffered with performance anxiety and a little bit of depression, a lot of bit of depression. I saw a psychiatrist for a while. And honestly, you know, I really believe this that I don't think of myself as like that's like an odd thing. I think it's a very real thing. And I actually was talking to a friend recently and we were saying, I think sport in general, actually, because you are kind of on a stage and we'll open up performance in general it is very cutthroat and you are on a stage right there. When you think of someone in drama, there is a light and and it's dialed in on one person. When I'm on a glass squash court, I have four glass walls around me. I'm trying to beat an opponent. It literally looks like two killer fish in a fish bowl and like people are around it watching it. And so I think that that's hard in anything. I think growing up being a teenager is hard. And I think that finding out that things aren't always so easy, which is an inevitable part of of adolescence, is understanding like, yo, life is gonna get hard, girl, and you got to get tough really quickly. And I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I don't think I was stubborn, yes, right? Like the cowboy shoes situation, I was stubborn, yes, but was I tough? I don't know. Not at that point in my life. And I think that it was hard to go from feeling like I was very dominant. I had a lot of almost like this, very tomboyish masculine energy where I was just like, let's go, this
Mhm.
idea, this like kind of stereotypical, like, world beater attitude, like I can do anything and I'm invincible and blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, whoa, this is gonna get hard now. And are you resilient? Are you tough? And quite frankly, like it had been pretty easy to get what I wanted. So I wasn't that resilient and I wasn't that tough. And I can say that with a smile now because that is how you become resilient and how you become tough is, the hard times, right? You don't, I always get told by my coach, like, God or the universe doesn't give you patience or doesn't give you strength. It gives you opportunities to become strong, right? It gives you situations in which you can become patient and learn these graces.
Mm.
You're not going to just get gifted them, right? And so it was a rude awakening for things to become hard and to be, to come up against adversity. Um, but then I always think too, like now having gone through a lot of more personal hardships in my life, more so off a squash court than on it, it makes it a lot easier to then go out onto a squash court now and be able to be resilient and to be powerful and to be a powerful woman out there. Um,
So,
I think,
yeah, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you just hit on something, um, which was the stuff happening outside of your squash world, life,
yeah,
here you are, sport, that's what you do, that's your job. And then there's life that throws these curveballs. Talk about that, because I think that that's really for women around the world to hear your story, Olivia, I think is so powerful because it's so inspiring and it makes them realize that they can deal with adversity with grace and be resilient and become strong and powerful and lean into that when they need to.
no, totally. I think, it was tough. I think a lot of things happened very quickly in my life. I had these wonderful things. Remember one of my best years on tour, things kind of happened quickly. I like moved up in the rankings super quickly. I had the mentor of Natalie Granger, who was a very powerful, sassy woman herself. And she really helped kind of push along my career. I had a lot of faith in her knowledge, and that really empowered me. And kind of everything in my life got quite a bit better. It was like kind of the start of 2017, and I Alan proposed and all of these things. And I kind of had this I went from 27 in the world to 12 in the world in like, 8 months. It was kind of crazy in 2017. And then I had this like big crescendo of, okay, I'm doing so well. I won a national title, all of these things, I'm getting married. I had this wonderful thing. And then it is life, right? My best friend was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at very young, and my parents divorced. Then we had the pandemic happened, and my best friend passed away at the start of at really the kind of the middle of the pandemic, and that was very hard for me. I think I'd known her; she was my best friend since I was 2, and I think that reality of just how precious life is, for me as an athlete, trying to make sense of like, okay, well, how do I best honor her? In the beginning, it almost was like if I wasn't winning, then I was dishonoring her memory. That puts so much like, and you can't put that kind of meaning on a game, right? But yeah, then we had the pandemic and we lost our funding, and we had to move back in, with my dad. And it was just, there's a lot of stuff. My husband was stuck in Scotland because we didn't have the marriage certificate over there. And things kind of happened. The tour started up again. We were traveling a lot. And, I had a family that was also sick as well and dealing with really hard things, more kind of mental illness, people that I loved and cared about. Hurting has always been hard for me. But honestly, I think really like when I really look back to one of, the hardest kind of 5 months was actually, post Christine passing, and kind of things like starting back again on the tour was kind of last January. I've been kind of struggling, and I really can honestly say this, that when you are putting bad energy out, you really attract really bad stuff. And I was like I was so negative and so, you know, I think women in general don't realize how freaking energetically powerful they are. That
Exactly.
when you like attract, if you want to show negative crap, you are going to bring in negative crap. End of discussion. And I got COVID, or I did this humongous training block. I felt great. I didn't play any tournaments for a while. Um, got COVID, got long COVID. So for 6 weeks, basically couldn't breathe, had a string of bad results, had a freak accident in one of my tournaments in England, and I ended up like popping out a rib and then tearing my back. My QL was out. Got to go and see my sister in Costa Rica, which was a great thing, but then had some tumultuous times. It was just, there was like a lot of things that were one thing after another, and I was so negative that I just kept attracting more negative things. Like, let's just add another thing, add another thing. And really the crescendo of I think that the most like the peak of the trough, right? Like the lowest of the low. I was in Cairo, Egypt for the World Championships, and I honestly didn't want to go. I was stressed. I wasn't feeling good. I had said to Alan, I don't want to go. I don't want all these, whatever. This is a bad idea. He's like, look, we already paid for the ticket. Let's go. Fast forward 3 days later, I have 2 bacterial infections, one bladder infection that spread to my kidneys. I'm peeing blood. I can't keep anything in me. I've got an Egyptian doctor sticking needles in my butt for penicillin. Okay. And this is when I realized, I said, this is a manifestation of every single negative thing that I've thought, every limiting, unempowered thought that I've ever had. This is the crescendo of like me giving away my power. And this is what it looks like. This gunky me with getting a shot in my butt. This is what it looks like. And it's so interesting because I think there's this expectation that everything's going to be okay. And for so long, I had paved over, right? Like that's such a a woman's thing to do is to be like, okay, let's just sweep, we'll make it look good, but like let's make it look fine, and like let's make it look pretty, and everything will be okay, right?
I want to just add to that, and I'm going to say this publicly. Olivia is, of course, my daughter, my firstborn. I didn't do you any favors there. I was the queen at sweeping up the mess and making everything look pretty. Like to the outer world, everything was perfect. If our insides were hurting, nobody knew. And I didn't do you
Exactly.
any favors in that. So I publicly apologize. Of course, I've
No,
already apologized, but
no,
I
no.
think it's
It's
important
just
to
like,
acknowledge that, because I think that that's behavior I role modeled, which made
mm,
you do it, which is not really addressing the problem.
but it's
You know, it's
I think it's conditioned from society, which is this
I,
idea of like
exactly.
people are afraid to come apart because we don't actually welcome people to come apart. And you know, the the crazy thing is like statistically speaking, like men are way more at risk for things like suicide. Why? Because they are even more so taught that they're not allowed to come apart, that sensitivity is bad, that giving, sending your emotions out. And I actually think too that there's this idea that women are supposed to bear the brunt of other people's emotions, and to take, there's such a nurturing effect, which is in our, maybe in our genetic makeup. But I don't think that we also get this idea of like, okay, we're going to make space for this, for this other person, but we also need to make space for ourselves, and we need to make space to let out what we're feeling. I think that there's a it's just very, very hard to really let things out, and to let ourselves heal and give ourselves allowance to heal. I think that that's a really, really powerful thing. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this, like, in this moment, life cannot get any worse. And why can life not get worse? Life can totally get worse, right? Like, getting a shot in your butt is not as bad as losing your best friend or all of these other things, right? But it was life can't get worse because I am in such a bad place. I am so powerless. I'm so unempowered that life cannot get worse, because this is it. This is what rock bottom looks like. This is,
Mm.
I feel as bad on the outside as I do on the inside, right? And it's time to do something about it.
Yeah, so that's a great inflection point, to recognize it, and to come back and just sort of say, because otherwise, to your point, I couldn't agree more with, you want negativity. I mean, I've changed my life up to cut any form of toxicity out. Things are going to happen that are out of your control, but if you
Totally.
can control it, don't step into it. You want to be negative,
So
you will attract negative. So I think it's fantastic that you're so aware of it, because only when you become aware of it can you affect change. So talk about
100.
that, Liv. Talk about the way you went about it, because it seems to be that you've gone about it, and this might not be the perfect word, but I think it's an interesting word, systematically. You've been
Yeah,
very
definitely.
disciplined in how you have
Totally.
switched the lever of your mindset.
Totally. Totally. I think it started, so once I got home, I took some time off. I went away to Costa Rica. I really let myself slow down, and I
Mm,
was like, I'm going to honor every need that is there. I'm really going to honor it. I'm going to listen. Didn't move my body for 2 weeks. I spent so much time with my amazing sister, literally on a balcony in the middle of the jungle, just talking and singing and drinking cacao for 2 weeks and swimming in the ocean. And honestly, like, I things weren't just like perfect after that, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I went away, I like did this mystical healing thing.
mm-hmm.
There was probably a part of me that was hoping that it would be easy like that. Like, we can just flip a switch. Oh, great. I'm like, I'm switched on. And it probably took me like, 3 months to really get to a place where it was like, okay, I do feel quite a bit healed. And it wasn't like I got all these perfect results. It wasn't like that at all. It was as in perfect results on a squash court or off a squash court. Like, I wouldn't say things were like so much brighter, but I definitely felt like my core strength was, my fire was lit. And now it was just a
I like
matter of
that.
turning up the dial, right? Like, how do
That's
we turn on
beautiful.
that burner?
Mm-hmm.
How do we turn
Mm.
on that burner? And I would say, honestly, really, and I have to be honest, like, 3 months ago, I decided like, I want to renovate. I'm ready to renovate. I'm ready to do the real work, because it is real work, right? Transformation is not a hope, it's not a prayer. It is work. It is getting your hands dirty and doing the work. And I said, I want to change myself. I want to be my best version of myself. And what does that mean? And what is it going to take?
That's
And guess
wonderful.
what? The
Hmm.
first month of waking up early, of listening to empowering podcasts, about high performance lifestyle, about, stoicism, fueling myself properly, making sure I got to yoga class as much as I could. Every day, whether I was tired or not from training, saying, when I walk into a room, I want to be a light. I want to be the brightest light in
Ooh,
that room. And I
I
want to
love
reflect.
that. That's a
Yeah, I
beautiful
want to
quality.
reflect those energies to everyone, and stop thinking of it in terms of what people, because when you're negative, it's so self-obsessed in such a destructive way, right? It's like, that person's doing unto me, or, oh, they're not giving to me. And it's like, why don't I just give out? Why don't I just give out energy and just like throw that light force out of myself and be that? All of a sudden, everyone is an ally. Everyone is, because the universe will do that. They will send you, the universe will send you so many different messages and lessons to help you be your higher self, as long as you're committed to that journey. And I think so. It was like kind of this healing process. Okay, let's get the fire going again. Let's get that internal, like, let's get aligned. And then the last kind of 3 months or so have been this idea for me, two things mostly, which was that the first was what you just said, which is so powerful. And I really believe this now. You can control the things that you can control, and absolutely do that. But you can only let go of the things you can't control if you are controlling the things you can, right?
Exactly.
When you are not doing what you can with what you can, with what you have, guess what? You're never going to let go of the things that you can't control. It's just the truth. Like, if you are hoping to let go, it won't happen unless you are doing the things you can. Because now I'm like,
Actually,
oh, I can't control that. That's gone.
so that's a very interesting. I didn't think of it kind of like that. I've been forced to let go of certain things, like my adult children. They have their own lives. I just want them to be happy. But when they hurt, when Olivia's feeling bad about herself, I'm feeling bad because I can feel it. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter where she is in the world. I can see her body language and my body to whatever. But I finally got to a point, or Ian or Georgia, where I love you guys so much, but you know what? I can't control that. You're on your journeys. Each of you are on your journeys, and I have to trust and believe that you will get to where you need to go. And, life is a long journey, and it's never, ever smooth. It's not for anybody. And so,
Yeah.
so everybody's trying to find their way. And it's really, I think what you're getting at is it's really about how you find your way. And what I mean by
Totally.
that is when you approach it, when you do the work, when you look for the good, when you are disciplined and determined and stick with routine and know in the face that things are going to happen. How do you respond to that? Like, and it's interesting just meditating twice a day and stuff. It gives me so much distance from any sort of real knee jerk or emotional response where I can just absorb and see something. I give myself more, it gives me more time to take in a situation. So talk a little bit. So you're coming out of it. The past 3 months have been awesome. I also know when I introduced you, and of course I know this because I'm her mother, that she's studying integrative nutrition. So it would be great to hear a little bit about your path as you're coming out these past 3 months and how you're thinking and feeling, but also talk about what you're doing with integrative nutrition and how you imagine that part of your life.
Yeah, I think, obviously as an athlete, like, nutrition is so important. And in the past kind of 3 months or so, I've actually really kind of expanded this idea of, what you take in, like your food and your nourishment is not just what you put on your plate. Like, that is a very important part of it. Don't get me wrong. That's a very important part. And when you're studying integrative nutrition, obviously there's a lot of dietary theory and a lot of coaching theory, about helping people be their best selves. But really, they talk so much about, you are your own first client, right? Like, if you want to sell transformation to people, well, what's your transformation? And that kind of
Mm.
always hit me a little bit hard. Like, geez, yeah, it's true. I know all these things, and I can, tell you like, oh, well, don't do this or do this or it'll help you, but being the change that you want to see and embodying that and having the ability to be empathetic, like I think that has been very, very empowering for me. And I do I necessarily see myself as like a nutrition coach? I don't know. I do love it. I've gotten really into nutrition lately. Um, just from a performance perspective and watching my body change and to adapt and perform so much better just by awareness has been huge. But honestly, like the biggest thing that I think that this has all taught me is this idea of like empowered wellness and going in, my favorite yoga teachers at my yoga studio are the teachers that are like, hey, this is hard. You're in pain. You can do this. Right. It's the same thing. Like if I was a nutrition coach and I was coaching someone, I think it would be like, hey, this is hard. You can do it. And I think that that's something that as a society, we don't like to do. We don't like to say, hey, this is hard, but you can do it, right? You can do these hard things. We get into this idea of like, well, if I'm good at something, it should be easy. Or if I'm coming up and something is resisting me, well, I can't do it. I'm not good enough or I'm not tough enough. No, you are tough enough, but that doesn't mean it's going to be any harder. That doesn't make the obstacle any less. It's just telling you that you're going to have to pull your stuff together and find a way. But when you get through that, right? When you get through that fire, the empowerment is huge. Huge, right? When you get through the fire and you're on the other side and you're like, yeah, baby, this is what I'm talking about. And I've gone through that in the last couple of months in particular, where I have these moments where I'm like, that was awful. I did a max versa climbing test yesterday, and I was able to shave 9 seconds off of my time, which is
That's
ginormous. It's a
insane.
ginormous
Yeah.
amount of time. Like
Wow.
with what we're doing, it's death. It's death for 2 minutes and 38 seconds. It is death. It is terrible. And afterwards, it's euphoric, right? But you only get that through I'm there. Noises are coming out of me. I've got my girl Bridget behind me. I've got my teammates cheering for me as I'm going through as hard as I can. You can do the hard thing though, right? But
Stepping
it
out
is
of your
going to be
comfort
hard.
zone. It's really
Yes,
getting,
it's going to be
and I
hard.
think, that whole point, whether it's in sport or anything in life, the notion of stepping out of your comfort zone, that is where the growth happens. That's where, the word you used is euphoria, that feeling you feel, that empowerment. Because the truth is, when you're in your comfort zone, very little growth happens. The growth
100%.
happens. And I think even you on the
100%.
Versa climber is yet another metaphor. You did something tough and you got through it, and you
Totally.
push, and you felt
100%.
on the other side.
It's
So
the same
I,
thing though for the last 2 months where it's been like, it's, I want to track, I've been trying to track my nutrition, track my macros. I've been trying to heal my relationship with food. That's been a very important thing to me because I think many women go through these tough relationships with food. I think being an athlete it's such a fine line between keeping your body well, but you're also hungry all the time. There's a lot, we're hungry for a lot of different things that maybe are not necessarily needs are not getting met. That's another thing that we talk about a lot in integrative nutrition is this idea of like hunger. There's physical hunger, there's emotional hunger. When you have a lot of stuff going on, you that also is it's hungry. It's a hungry time. And I've been wanting to really heal my relationship with food. I've had, things where it's like good food, bad food, and it's been hard for me. But the past 3 months, I don't, there's no connotation of I can't have this food or I can't have that food. There's no good and bad food. There's just macronutrients of, okay, this fits into my plan for the day. Did I hit my proteins? Okay. All right. I have these, I can have a cookie and I enjoy the cookie. There's no guilt with the cookie, which is hard. That's very hard for me.
yeah, I
It's hard
know
for me to have one cookie. It's hard for me to have one cookie,
I
right?
know.
Freaking
I
hard.
have to,
It's
I
hard for
have to,
everyone to have one
I have
cookie.
to take a pint of ice cream and I eat a half of it and I go
It's
back for
hard.
more. And then I have to turn the water on and melt the ice cream, else I'm going to eat the whole pint. I buy a bag of
Hard.
like I want to eat the whole thing. And I do,
100%.
and listen, the truth is, I don't work out like you. I'm not a professional athlete, but I work out hard and I love food.
Yeah.
But to your
Yeah.
point of, am I emotionally hungry or am I physically hungry? I think
And there's
sometimes I
both.
think it's just the taste, but I think it's
There's both.
probably
It's
maybe,
both. But
yeah,
also
yeah,
there's this
interesting.
idea of like, I also feel like
Mm.
there's this idea of deprivation where it's like, well, if you allowed yourself a scoop of ice cream every single day, you'd have you wouldn't want a whole thing. Like for me, it was like I found out that if I allowed myself to have a chocolate bar, when I did actually have a chocolate bar, I only needed one chocolate bar and then it was enough. Whereas, okay, we have this, especially I find in women
Mm-hmm.
that if you don't do something perfectly, then it's not worth doing. So you get on to, let's just say I'm on a roll, I'm doing everything perfect, perfect, perfect. And I have one day where I eat a little bit differently, or I don't exercise, or maybe I'm a little bit snappier today to my spouse, or maybe this happens, or maybe instead of taking the stairs, I take the elevator. And I've told myself I'm not going to do that. All of a sudden, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're like, oh, can't do this anymore. Can't do it. It's done. The streak is broken. Never again. And it's like, in reality, it's one meal. It's one moment. It's one elevator instead of a set of stairs. It's one. But we let that become a definition so quickly. It's like, girl,
And you know what your
no.
sister would say? Give yourself some grace, mama.
Yeah.
Give
Give
yourself
yourself
grace.
some
You
grace.
can give yourself grace. You can have a
And
day. And maybe we shouldn't even define it bad. Women are so self
no,
friggin' critical. It
totally.
doesn't matter, by the way, if you're 30, if you're 15, if you're in your
No,
late 50s. We all suffer from the same thing. We just don't
totally.
cut ourselves a break.
And also, you don't need to punish yourself with other bad behaviors, right? Like
Mm, mm-hmm.
going off and like going on, away from what you want to be is to me is it's self-sabotage. Like that's a punishment to yourself.
Yep.
It's not something that it's going to make you feel better. It's going to make you feel worse. Have your moment of grace and then say, guess what, girl? Let's get back
We're
to
back
it because
on.
you're
Yep.
worth it, because
I
you're
love
back,
it.
you are
Love
worth
it.
it, and that's it. Right?
That's
Like
it.
there's no such thing as this idea of like letting yourself like in order to best honor yourself you need to go back to being your best self. That is, so to me, is like the most important thing, is like allow yourself that grace and say none of us are perfect, and guess what, tomorrow's a new day and I'm going to do my best tomorrow.
You know what? I have another question for you though on that. Like, I mean, this might be, and we might be going down a little bit of a branch. So if you don't mind, or a tangent, but like when I think about showing up as our best selves every day, it's funny. Like, I wouldn't say I necessarily attach, oh, I've had a bad day eating. I'm suddenly not my best self.
Mhm.
I kind of feel, I personally wake up every day. I do all of my routines and stuff, my self care, my modalities that help me just be my best self. They get me off to a great start. And if I do have a bad food day, I'm more angry at the bad food day, but I don't feel like I haven't shown up as my best self. And then
Yeah,
maybe I say, well, maybe this is my best self today. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But I don't lose
totally,
the best self because my goal is every day to show up as my
totally,
best self, to do everything I
totally.
can. And nobody has the perfect best self days ever, like in a row. Like
No,
it's just about being
no,
your
never.
best self on that given day because
100%.
circumstances are going to come your way. So before we get on to the next question, I just would love to hear your point of view on that as it relates to women around the world. How do you show up as your best self? Like, Liv, what are some of your routines? You wake up, how does Olivia get herself fired for the day and showing up as her super self?
I think for me, I have a few triggers that I've put in place of like moments where I'm like, okay, this is what I do. I like to write down my plan for the day. I wake up, I take a shower. I like to wake up early. I take a shower. I've been trying to do a little bit of a cold rinse. That's hit or miss these days when it's cold out. I'm like, I
Good
don't
for
know, but
you. Wow.
I'm trying hard. It's really hard. And we talk about cold rinse, we're talking like 5 seconds at the end of a warm shower.
It's great for your hair, by the way. It makes your hair shine. So if only you get your
Well,
head, which
that's
is the
it. There you
hardest part.
go. But yeah, I think, I have my breakfast routine, I have my coffee routine, but honestly, it really starts with me, for me, on the bus. I take a lot of public transport now that my husband has the car to get to work. And I used to complain about public transportation, but I love it. I sit there, it starts out honestly, the first thing that really sets my day, besides my husband walking out like super cold while I'm doing my thing in the kitchen and giving me a hug and then him going back to sleep, is I want to put a smile on the bus driver's face. That is my goal. Is
Mm.
I when I walk onto the bus, I'm like, I want this bus driver to smile. So I wake up and when I get
Is he
on
the
and I go to
same
scan
guy?
my
Does he
septic
know
log.
you? Does he know? Is it the same
I
guy
think
or is it a
so. It's a
couple?
couple of different people. There's a
Okay.
couple of different people,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
try and like say, hey, how's it going? Good morning. Thank you so much. And honestly, that starts my day out really well because I'm like,
Beautiful.
I want to see someone smile and it makes my energy get better. And then I try and listen to an empowering podcast, maybe a high performance podcast, or I'm nerding out over sports science at the moment. So I listen to like an Andrew Huberman podcast.
Yeah,
He's
he's
amazing,
good.
by the
He's
way.
really good. I agree.
Um,
Really good.
he's incredible. High performance sports high performance podcast is amazing. They interview some amazing athletes. Um, there's some really cool podcasts out there these days, like Sisterhood, that talks about empowering yourselves and starting a day well. And then by the time I get to the center where I'm going to go and do my business for the day, when I open the gym door, whether I'm by myself in the gym before everyone's there or when people are there, I'm like, I am going to light this room up. This is it. And not really even for anyone else, but for me. And I want to be that person with the most energy who's going to be that person. And that really, I'm telling you, just being like, I want to be the brightest light in here, not a comparison to others. Oh, they're, not as bright as me. No, 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 no. Just, I'm going to be my brightest light. I want people to, when they walk in, it's like, hey, how's it going? Did you sleep well? What's going on? And bringing that kind of energy, you can't go wrong. When you
You
start your
can't.
day trying to make people smile and because you're smiling. You can't make people smile unless you're smiling, right? You
Yes.
can't make people excited unless you're excited. And when you go
Mm.
out to do that, I think for me that has just been a huge, huge thing. Huge,
Very
huge.
inspiring. It's very inspiring. So it's a funny thing. You're putting out that light. So you're like, be the light, be the change, be the
Yeah,
light. And then what happens is it resonates with people and it gets
everywhere.
them jazzed and it gets them motivated. And they might be walking in not feeling so good, but they see you as this light. And I just want to add one thing to that, which is a little of a bizarre tangent. But recently, when you competed at the 2022 World Team Championships, I know that you played number 4 and you played several matches. You're fortunate enough, but talk about you were the team captain. And I think that's a really big thing. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because if you're talking about walking in with that smile, emanating that light, bringing that kind of energy, I would imagine you would have done it at the team championships in Cairo. So talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's important, obviously, when you think of team um, events, and squash is obviously an individual event, mostly. Like, even when you play a team event, your match itself is individual. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's hard at times because it is an individual sport to just to be able to kind of drop that idea of like me. I spend all day every day trying to make myself better, right? Everything is okay. What do I need to eat in order to perform my best? What can I implement into this to make me better here? Every single thing is like we talk about being your best self is geared. My life is geared towards being my best self, right? That's the beauty of professional sport, is that is literally my priority. um but I think bringing that for other women and being that person, and it's being having empathy, because not everyone is going to be able to be there in that way all the time, but saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to be an energy source. So if you need something, I'm going to bring it. I'll be there, and I'm going to bring it no matter what. So even if you need a little something something today, your girl here is going to have your back with the energy. And I think that you need that person, and everyone has that person in their life where it's like, I need I need a little bit of something something. Who am I going to call? Who am I going to get that big energy from? Everyone has that person, or I hope you do. If you don't, get one of them. um, and be one of them. I think even more importantly,
Yeah.
be that person for someone, because then you're really, now we're cooking, right? Like when you are that person is way even better than finding that person. But there is something so prideful in being that in a very humble way, right? It's not like a look at me, I'm so great. Nah, that's not, then you're not bringing the energy. That's not what we're talking about. It's really just radiating light, right? Being just a ball of energy, and it sounds a lot more exhausting than it really is. It really
I
is
was thinking it sounds
very
very
energizing.
exhausting. Well, and I mean, I think you have a team dynamic. You had a great team this year. This is
Yeah.
probably your personal, not best year in terms of your competing personally necessarily,
Yeah.
but in terms of your attitude about it, if you don't mind me
Yeah.
saying. I hope I'm not saying
Yeah.
anything. Is that,
No,
I mean, where
totally.
you really, because you showed up as the light. When you're the light,
Yeah.
good things happen,
That's
right?
it. Good things happen. And honestly, things have just kind of, my goal was like I was going to go there, and whether or not I got to play a lot, because obviously I was in the fourth position. So you kind of are like the alternate. And I did get to play some matches, but I
Mm,
made a promise to myself that I was going to be the best teammate, and I was
mm.
going to make sure that even though I was away, I was going to get the best training possible in, so that I wasn't going to just kind of sit on my butt for 7 days and like sometimes compete and sometimes not. I was like, okay, no, if I'm competing, okay, that's my priority. And when I'm not cheering my girls on and making sure that they're getting the best out of themselves, I'm going to be in the gym or on court with our coach, getting the best out of myself
That's great.
for my own development. And that benefit too, I think knowing that I was honoring myself and then honoring the team really was so empowering, and really was why I was able to continue on my growth, because I didn't stop just because I was kind of in a new set of surroundings, if that makes sense.
You know what else I'm just hearing, Olivia, which I think you'll appreciate. We're about sisterhood at Under the Sisterhood, and basically what you did was you built sisterhood by going after. It wasn't just about Olivia; it was about being a great teammate. Teammates about women or men lifting other women or men. It's about lifting each other up. And sometimes
Totally.
it's not, unfortunately, sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about the other
No.
people. And when women can do that, I mean, there is nothing more powerful. So, by the way, congratulations on that. That is really, I like the way you told that story. That's the first time, by the way, everybody, I've heard that. I haven't really spoken to my daughter since she's gotten back from the world in a meaningful way. So that's really nice to hear that. So this next question, I think you'll like. What would you say your superpowers are? And I say plural because you have many. But tell us about your superpowers, Olivia.
I think I can think of two where I think that they're like a uniqueness, and I think I have a voice, and not just like a voice that I can say things, but I like to think that I can reach people with my voice, and I do believe that I can inspire
I agree.
people with my voice. I I love life. I I
Mm,
I really love life. I was like saying this to our physio actually when we were at World Teams. I was like, I want like, my tombstone to say like, here lies Olivia Clyne. And I actually don't want a tombstone because I want to be turned into a tree, but that's another story. But I want my little plaque on my tree to say, here lies Olivia Clyne, daughter, wife, mother, lover of life. Right? That's like,
or Liv loves life.
yeah,
Sorry, her mother's always
exactly.
doing something with Liv. Yeah.
But it's I think like for me, I love life. I like to think that I can provoke that infectiousness in others and hopefully empower them. I think I like to hope that my words affect people and inspire people. Um, I do think that I have an ability to put my feelings into words in a way that can make sense for others and hopefully help other people in their own journeys, and at the very least know that there is a connection there and these connections. um I think that that's one. I think actually maybe there's two more. My second one is that I have a wicked memory. I have a
Okay.
very very crazy memory, And that makes it really powerful for me to connect with others, because there's nothing like when you know someone is listening and they remember, right? Like when you have a friend, like I have friends where they remember every little thing that I say, and that attention to detail, I think that awareness is very powerful and potent. And I do have like a crazy memory. I remember really random things for no reason. Um, and maybe my third one is like, honestly, at the moment, I think it's my resilience. This like idea of like get knocked down 7 times, like back up 8. And I really believe that. Like I'm like,
I think you've had that
I really
superpower for a
believe
long time. So I don't think that's
that.
like a recent one. I think you've had that for a
No, but
long
I
time
trust
because you,
it. I trust it. I trust it. Before, when bad things would happen, or tough, not bad things would happen unto me. It's the universe. Like life is hard, right? It's not, nothing's happening unto me. That doesn't exist. It's like life happens. End of discussion. It's not unto Olivia. It's not unto mom. It's not unto Alan or anything. It's like life. Life happens. And I don't take it so personally anymore, which is why I can be resilient about it. Cause I'm like, it's not like someone's out to get me. I
mm,
stepped in dog poop today. I stepped in dog poop. My sneakers are in the sink right now because I stepped in an absolute globber
okay,
of dog poop.
okay, but I think that's
Right.
supposed to be good luck. So
I mean, I
look
hope
at
so.
it, or is that
I hope
when a
so.
bird shits?
But what I mean is like, before, if that had happened
Mm,
last January, that goes into, if I'm my negative self, that's like another thing. Look at the universe doing to me now. Look at another thing, another freaking thing. And instead, I'm like, of course, everything's going so well. That is just, you have to have if that's the counterbalance, is that I step in a bit of dog
exactly.
poop,
I was just
I can
thinking
deal with
that.
that, right?
Exactly. I think it's just a reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Life's gonna throw you
Mercury's
these
still in
little
it.
bumpy roads. You gotta be
Yep,
ready.
Mercury's still in retrograde. Mercury's still in retrograde till the
Exactly.
18th.
So,
It's like it's not personal. And so I'm like, okay, I get back up. I
mm,
have days that are tough. I get back up because it's not this. No, what the universe loves me. I'm so blessed. I'm so lucky. I am the luckiest person ever. I
mm,
have so many beautiful friends, so much love in my life. The universe couldn't possibly be out to get me because I have too many good things in my life. There's no chance. So when those things happen, I'm like, okay,
isn't that a
just life
wonderful
that happens.
thing?
It's life, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
so, so unless you have another superpower, which I believe you have more, but that's up to you to describe. How would you say you use, I mean, you use these superpowers to help other women? I mean, you started to say that I empower, but I really want you to be more focused on that. So if you looked at your first and second superpower, how would you like, how do you use that to help other women?
I mean, I would like to do more with that, but I think mostly, especially for the kind of the second two, it's more of an empathetic thing of understanding, like, hey, you can do this. I'm around a lot of junior women. I try and spend my time when I do talk to them or play squash with them, or just, I'm in general conversation. I really try and tell them, hey, like, guess what? This game is hard. Life is hard. This game doesn't define you. Even life doesn't
Mm,
define you.
mm,
You define you. You decide your definition. You decide your choices. They define you. And that's all down to you, right? Nothing else. And I'm very adamant about trying to empower young women to take control of their own choices, mostly I guess as it pertains to sport, because that's my vehicle and that's what I know and that's what I'm
mm-hmm.
around. um Letting them, I was playing with two young women who are very good, and I was saying, like, like, you guys are too nice out there. You need to be a little sassier. I want to see that, like, it's okay to like have some sass. Like, been taught that need to be these like little docile little creatures of, oh, so you're so sweet and delicate, and oh, look at you in your little tennis skirt or whatever. I'm like, nah, you got to get your hands dirty, because life is getting your hands dirty. It's doing the work and not being afraid for it to be a little bit messy. Being okay with
Mm,
it being a little of you being tough, being okay with
Mm.
having to go through adversity, and guess what, getting mud on your face and going through the fire, going through the fire, go through the fire. You know, I maybe am more inspired by others than sometimes I inspire. I think that
I
I'm
think if you're
very
having those conversations with these young women, I think it's pretty inspiring. It's probably new to them to hear some of this stuff, coming from the families that they come from. So believe it or not, you're actually doing them a huge favor. It's like you're opening their eyes and awakening them, because life is hard, life is challenging, sport is hard. And if you don't get your hands dirty in
it's a
anything,
metaphor.
yeah,
That's what sport is,
it's
right? Like sport, it's like it's like what we're talking about, the Versa climber, right? It's like in theory, it's a Versa climber. You know, in theory, I hit a ball against a wall for a living, right? Like it's like not that, you know, I'm not changing, I'm not curing cancer. I'm not doing these amazing things. However, what it represents is so integral to our part of life, which is this idea of like being gritty, going through obstacles. You're going to have wins, you're going to have losses, you're going to have days where you feel on the moon, you're going to have days where you feel like you want to bury your head in the sand. Can you treat those two just the same? Can you treat success and with grace? Can you treat defeat with grace? Can you be dedicated to something that doesn't always show you dividends right away? Maybe you have to defer gratification for a while. Can you be patient? Right? And that's why I love sports so much, is because yes, there are some things like I know that if I eat better and I sleep better, pretty quickly, I feel better. Right. But that doesn't necessarily translate into I win more. Right. I might feel better, but on paper, I might not see success as much. However, it's knowing that I'm doing those things for my best self, no matter what. Right. That's what being your best self is like, I'm
exactly.
doing those things not just for a result, not for to get the big job, but because I want to be my best self. And that means I am capable of these things. Right. And I think that if I had the opportunity to say to young women, like, you are capable, this is about being of trusting that you are capable, that you have your potential to do this. It is there for you. You have the skill, but it's not going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. It's going to be really freaking hard. And that's going to make it so much more gratifying that you have to go through the fire, right? You go through the fire and you come out on the other side. And guess what? You're going to walk really probably 200 meters of bliss, and you're going to find another fire, and you're going to have to go through that too. It's a never ending cycle. And every time you go through that, you can trust yourself a little bit more. You can trust that challenging yourself is going to grow you, that the next time you fight that fire, maybe you're a little bit more equipped, that you know it's not forever. Maybe it doesn't last as long, right?
Mm,
Instead
mhm.
of praying for it to be over, you're like, you know what? I'm in it, and I'm going to savor this, being tough and fighting through this. I'm going to savor that. I'm going to sink my teeth into it. I'm going to enjoy this, right? As opposed to being to hiding and making yourself smaller. No, you're capable. You can do this. Make yourself bigger. Walk forward. You know, journey onwards. Puff your
Mm,
chest out and go for it.
I love
Right?
this. You know what, Olivia? Can I just say something? I mean, like, I was going to ask you if there was a message you wanted to leave women around the world, but you've left the message. I think the big thing to really honor here is, everything that Olivia is describing of, puff your chest, move forward, don't make yourself small, make yourself big. And know that there will always be fires. There will be bliss fires. That's life. What I like about that description, everything you described, the grit, the determination, the toughness, the resilience, is that can be applied to sport. It can be applied to a job. It can be
Every,
applied to raising children. It can be applied to marriage, to everything in life. It is like,
everything.
if you think about life, is
Universal.
it's a long
Universal.
journey, and it's all about the process. And the process is you're going to come across these. It's navigating various terrains, and it's how you show up as your best self, how you decide to make yourself big, to your point, Olivia, and not small. and walk forward and move forward. And that's such a beautiful and like really inspiring message. So I don't want this conversation to end. This has been beyond a joy to be talking to my firstborn and my daughter, Olivia. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for being vulnerable with the world, and just for being you and for showing up.
Thanks, Mom. This was so much fun.
If you guys want to learn more about Olivia, you can follow her on Instagram on Olivia Eve _BC. That's Olivia Eve, EVE _BC, Olivia Clyne. Anyway, thank you so much, Olivia.
Thanks, Mom. See you later.
Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Zach Slaff, and edited by Zach Slaff. The music is by Ayla Schaefer, her song, Rose.